blustery day in quarantine. I might be making a trip to social media and haven't been there for a while. But yeah, so I brew beer. It's one of the things I do. Um, one of a lot of things I do. And I'm sitting on 5 kegs right now, and nobody's coming over to drink them because social distancing being what it is, yeah, no socializing. So, I thought I'd do a little tasting video, and one of the things that I've been thinking about doing is maybe inviting some of you, friends, family, over to bring a growler. Maybe if one of these sounds good to you, come over and get 64 or 128. So I've got a lineup of 5 beverages here, 2 fruit-based and 3 grain-based. And I'm just going to introduce them to you and do some tasting notes as we go. And if it's boring, I'm sorry. But it's interesting to me, and it's kind of boring out. So first up, we have a apple cider. I guess I'd call it a yard scrumpy because it's from my yard. And I didn't get too fancy with it. Pressed some apples, ruined some other ones, fermented it. Very dry, almost champagne-like in color. Not quite champagne-like in carbonation, but actually champagne-like is kind of the memory I have of last tasting of this. Nose is, yeah, dry cider. Maybe a hint of cinnamon on the nose. And green apple peel. Good. Very dry. Little bit tannic. Very light. I could see this making a nice snake bite, mixing with, in fact, I may try that later with got a dark beer that might blend well with this. It's very light, very drinkable, maybe a little too light flavor-wise. I usually like a little sweetness in my cider. The problem is you leave it in the keg long enough and the sweetness doesn't stay. It'll dry out. So that's that. This one just finished up. I was waiting for some sulfur notes to gas off. This is a Perry. Eric picked up some, Eric Garman, picked up some pear juice for me when he was getting some, and this is the result of that. And if I remember right, I used an English ale yeast to ferment this. Kind of a daring direction to go with for a Perry, and I didn't think it was going to pan out because at first it just smelled like a volcano with the sulfur. That's all gone. Very light, almost melony notes in with the pear. Yeah, like pear and honeydew lemon, at least to my nose. Nice little bit of sweetness in there. Kind of an Asian pear flavor. Very light. I love that it's got a little bit of haze to it personally. Just kind of the white, like the flesh of a pear. There's I wouldn't call it an off flavor, but a little bit of a vegetal note. Rosa said it was a little bit like olives on the very back end. That may sound a little weird, but not in an unpleasant way. And it's got a little bit of tartness, but not too much. A nice balance between pear, dryness, a little bit of sweetness, just all over the map as far as hitting all the boxes for me. Moving down the line, the rest of these are blends. I've been experimenting with sours, and so I had several different beers that resulted from those experiments, and they were all drinkable, but either had too much or not enough of certain characteristics. This was a Berliner Weiss. Started out as just a simple Berliner Weiss kettle soured, so you know. We wanted to go in a direction of citrus, and this ended up lacking a lot in flavor. So I had a kettle sour, a dark kettle sour. Took a small amount of that. It came out really puckered, and added that along with a 1 gallon batch of experimental Christmas beer that happened to have some of the I guess spice notes that I'd like to have in a Weiss. So this came out, for some reason, adding the dark beer with the extra tartness to it brought out the orange flavors, and a little bit of spice brought out the orange flavors. So it's not there in the nose, and I will tell you the secret to this is that the actual Berliner Weiss culture came from my parents' sauerkraut. It worked. The beer just lacked character, so now it got character from the darker beer, not from the sauerkraut. But the little bit of salt there I thought would help out. And now it's delicious. It's got a dry orange wheat flavor, not like some of the orange beers out there, more like just a little bit of orange peel. Little bit of clove, little bit of that cardamom, but otherwise light and drinkable. Not too terribly tart. A little tartness kind of on the front half of your palate. Very drinkable, super sessionable. Let's see, because it's a blend, I'm not sure I could give you exacts on the alcohol percentage, but this is pretty low. I'd say it's probably no more than 5 at most, probably in the mid to high 4% alcohol, and way more flavor than you'd expect for something like that. All right, this one is a bomb. I'm calling this Raspberry Warhead. This is a dark raspberry sour, just a little bit of lactose to give it a little bit of a milkshake consistency. The head on it was piled up, but like a lot of sours, it sort of diminishes pretty quickly. The lactose is there because this was overwhelmingly tart, and I want to encourage a little bit of mouthfeel to it. So got 5 pounds of berries from the yard, raspberries, a little bit of marionberry in there. Nose is very blackberry and cherry, a little bit on the nose, like a tart cherry. These sours aren't particularly hoppy till we get to the last one, so not really much there. There is a little bit of a hop note, and that's from some of the laurel, and I think there's a little willamette that I threw at this too, just to balance things out a little bit. And it's tart, not in a bad way though. It's not as bad as like a Warhead candy. It's drier than that, and it's got a good mouthfeel. So it doesn't hit you just on the front of the palate. It kind of washes back. The tart notes make it all the way back in a good way. I think I'd like this with a little more sweetness, but I didn't want to push it. I didn't want to end up where some of the sort of big name quote-unquote lambics, some like the trying to remember the name, but but some of them loaded up with stevia and other sugars and stuff to make it really sweet, and that's too much for me. This is tart, berry, dry, but with a good mouthfeel. A lot of times dry just seems like it just washes off your tongue. This still hangs around. Yeah. So far, none of them are bad. I enjoy them all. I did this one last largely because the hops are going to blow most of the other things away. So I was kind of going from the fruit to the malt. And this is the maltiest. This is a slightly sour CDA interpretation. I've been working on trying to dial in a recipe that I've been calling Happy Trees. This had several mistakes and missteps along the way, but in blending it together with some of the other beers that I have, and then dry hopping this with some Chinook, ended up with something, and I think a little bit of Mosaic. Ended up with something that is really palatable. There's not a ton of hop on the front end. It's there. There's a little bit of malt, a little bit of sweet malt. And it's funny, when you sour malty beers, I feel like it's almost like there's more malt in the nose. See, I like that. That's good. So you get a dry malty because of the acidity that's there from kettle souring. The hops balance in a way that I'd be scared to do in something that was completely soured. So this was half soured was the idea. Split the batch, soured half of it, didn't kettle sour the other half, blended them back, brought it to a boil again to arrest the lactic process, and then made it. And then this ended up a little bit tartar than I wanted. I was able to back blend with some of the Berliner Weiss and then dry hop it. And now what you've got is something that's like a slightly more sour, just a slight tangy version of kind of your black IPA. Malty, but with a really bright acidity to it and a lightness, so not heavy malty. You could drink quite a few of these, I think. Not a big hop bomb, so it might almost be better to call it like a sour black ale. I was a little scared to go really hard with the hops on it because sometimes those sour notes and those bitter notes together, they send a signal to our brain that's like poison, not palatable. This doesn't go there. It's yeah, it's just sour enough to give a brightness to the malt notes. So a dry malty rather than overly sweet or cloying malty, if that makes sense. Good. This one packs some punch. I'm not sure exactly where it's at on alcohol, largely because it's a blend again. But I'd say this one's probably a high 6, maybe even creeping up into the 7s. All right. Well, those are the 5 beers I have on tap. Tomorrow is brew day. I'm going to do a party guile. So I'm getting 2 distinct beers off of one brew session. One is going to be a Juicy Hazy, and that's going to get, what is it? Equinox, Mosaic, just a whole bunch of kind of bright, juicy, some Huel melon, I don't know how you say that, some fruity, juicy hops that I was able to get in bulk, all going into the whirlpool. So that's going to be made with some of the Mecca malts, a little bit of their rye, and a little bit and a fair amount of their wheat, their winter wheat, along with their Pilsner malt and a 2-row. And then on the second runnings of that, I'll take that, back that up with a little bit of corn sugar to add back some of the missing sugars. And then I've actually got a bunch of dark malt second runnings from my whiskey mash that I've been saving, sanitized, carried, mason jars in the fridge. So I'll be adding that in and going with a little bit more of a traditional Northwest IPA, boil hops, and then Centennial, and I think I've got some Comet and some Willamette and maybe some Mosaic there again, but a little bit more kind of in the boil, partitioned out, and then some of the dry hop, whereas the Juicy Hazy is going to be all Whirlpool, then dry hop again. So should be able to get a couple of distinct different beers. I'm doing Safe Ale 05, an American Ale standard. Got a starter going right now for the Northwest style IPA, and then the Juicy Hazy. I'm going to run that quick and hot with Loki Imperial, which is a Kveik yeast that I just love. That beer will be done in probably 3 days through primary. I will probably pitch my my first dry hop charge at Pete Krausen 24 hours after starting, and let that go until 5 days, and then I'll rack it into the keg and dry hop again for keg hops, and it should be ready to drink probably by next weekend. It'll be young, but it'll be drinkable. Anyhow, that's the brew report. If you are interested in picking up a growler of any of these, even with social distancing, I think we could meet you in the front yard and walk around in the side yard and pour a growler and enjoy each other's company for a couple of tasters. Sanitize and everything, but I need to clear out some kegs so I can make some more. You may ask, why make beer when nobody's drinking it? Well, some people comfort bake, comfort brew, I guess. And yeah, so why not? What else am I going to do? Spring break. I ain't got no job. Yeah. Later.